Once upon a time, in a quiet little neighborhood nestled between rolling hills and whispering trees, there lived a cat unlike any other. He was big, he was orange, and he was unquestionably rounder than any cat you'd ever seen. His name was Maximus, the Magnificent. Though most people just called him Max, Max didn't mind. He knew he was magnificent, and that was enough for him. Every day was a new chance for Max to explore, nap, eat, and find himself in the middle of something absolutely absurd. You see, Max wasn't just any fat cat. He had a flair for the dramatic, a nose for chaos, and a stomach that could rival a black hole. No crumb, no fish, no leftover pizza slice was safe from the endless pull of Max's appetite. But today wasn't just any day. Today was the day everything changed. That it all began when Max woke up from his 7th nap of the morning, stretched his stubby legs, and rolled off the windowsill with an ungraceful thud. He blinked, looked around, and noticed something odd. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The humans were gone. Normally, he wouldn't care. Max loved solitude. It meant freedom. It meant eating on the counters and sleeping in forbidden spots. But this silence had a weird edge to it. The air smelled funny, like pickles. Max hated pickles. He waddled his way to the front door and looked out the mail slot. Nothing. Just wind, trees, and an empty street. That's when he heard Ita low hum, like an engine, but deeper. It was coming from the backyard. Max's curiosity kicked in, along with his hunger. What if the sound was a food truck? A new kind of barbecue robot. He bolted more like fast shuffled through the house, leaped onto the kitchen counter, and squeezed his chubby self out the doggy door. Outside, the wind was swirling in odd patterns, and the trees looked like they were swaying to a beat he couldn't hear. Then he saw it. In the middle of the backyard, right on top of his favorite digging spot, stood a tall, shimmering machine. It had glowing buttons, metallic arms, and a tiny screen that blinked rapidly. Max stared. The machine stared back, and then, without warning, it spoke. "Welcome, Maximus. You have been chosen for Interdimensional Adventure Protocol." Max narrowed his eyes. Either this was a prank from the raccoons down the block, or his snack schedule was seriously messing with his brain. He took a step closer. The machine beeped and a hatch opened, revealing what looked like a portal. Swirling colors, sparkles, and possibly the smell of cheese drifted out of it. Max licked his paw, considered his options, then waddled forward. The promise of food, mystery, and maybe a nap in another dimension was too much to resist. And just like that, Max stepped into the portal, and the world as he knew it spun away. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in a world of jelly. Not metaphorically. Everything was literally made of jelly. The ground wobbled, the trees jiggled, the sky shimmered like gelatin in the sun. Max tested a paw on the surface. It bounced. Then he took a bite. Grape. He licked his lips. This place might be weird, but it was tasty. As he wandered further, Max saw creatures shaped like spoons, hopping along, singing songs and squeaky voices. A jellybird swooped past and dropped a chocolate coin at his feet. Max sniffed it. Real chocolate. This dimension was starting to feel like a dream come true. But of course, dreams never stay sweet for long. From the wobbly hills ahead came a loud, rubbery roar. The jelly creatures froze. Max's ears perked. Something huge was coming. The sky darkened. The jelly trees trembled. Then it appeared, a monstrous blob, towering over the landscape, made entirely of licorice and marshmallow. Its eyes glowed red, its mouth drooled caramel, and it was headed straight for Max. The jelly creatures screamed and scattered. Max, rather than run, did what any cat with an attitude problem and no common sense would do. He swatted at it. His paw sank into the goo. The monster roared louder. "Foolish, feline," it boomed. "I am the great Gloop, ruler of the gelatin realms. Who dares poke the Gloop?" Max sat down, unfazed. He licked his paw again. Then, with the kind of arrogance only a cat could muster, he meowed loudly and knocked over a nearby jello pillar for emphasis. The Gloop growled, then lunged. Max, surprisingly nimble for his size, ducked and rolled out of the way. The jelly land quaked. Max darted across the landscape, the Gloop stomping behind him, leaving sticky puddles in its wake. That's when Max saw it, a glowing doorway floating above a bouncing castle made of peach rings. The portal out. Max bounded up the gumdrop hill, dodged a rain of jelly beans, and leapt into the air, paws outstretched. Behind him, the Gloop let out a final gooey roar. Max soared through the doorway just as the world collapsed into a gelatinous avalanche. With a whoosh and a blip, Max landed in a pile of feathers. Feathers that belonged to giant chickens. The sky here was green, the grass was purple, and the trees grew upside down. A group of enormous chickens with monocles and top hats clucked around a long table, sipping tea. One of them looked down at Max. Double quotes. "Ah, the chosen feline," the chicken said in a posh accent. "We've been expecting you. Care for a biscuit?" Max blinked. He was covered in feathers and bits of cookie. He stood up, shook himself off, and took the offered biscuit. Not bad, vanilla bean. The chicken motioned him to sit. Max obliged. For the next hour, he was given a crash course in the politics of the chickenverse. Apparently, A rogue rooster had stolen the crown of Cluck and planned to use it to summon the eggpocalypse, a calamity that would rain scrambled eggs across all dimensions. Only Max, with his unpredictable feline instincts and massive appetite, could stop him. Before Max could protest, he was given a suit of armor made entirely of fried bacon, a grappling hook shaped like a drumstick, and a map made of cornflakes. His mission: infiltrate the rooster citadel, retrieve the crown, and prevent dimensional breakfast doom. Max sighed. All he wanted was a nap and maybe a sardine, but duty called, and so, bacon-armored and cornflake-mapped, Max set off into the sunrise of the chickenverse, unaware that the adventure was only beginning. Max hadn't walked far when he realized that walking in bacon armor was problematic. Every step crunched and crackled, making stealth impossible and attracting a swarm of flying toast butterflies. One of them perched on his ear, flapped once, and then exploded into crumbs. Max blinked, shook off the toast debris, and trudged forward through a fog of syrup mist that rolled across the chicken fields like a slow-moving breakfast parade. A rooster in camouflage popped out from a bush made of scrambled eggs and squawked in his direction. Max responded with a firm swat to the rooster's beak and a dramatic spin into a forward roll that crushed several biscuits beneath his weight. His new bacon armor squealed as he landed, slightly twisted, but still intact. Ahead lay the rooster citadel. It stood tall and dramatic, shaped like an enormous egg, with yellow-colored flags flapping atop every spire. Giant chicken guards strutted along the parapets, armed with ketchup blasters and mayonnaise cannons. Max paused to strategize. He glanced at his cornflake map, which was slowly disintegrating in the syrupy air. If he didn't move quickly, it would turn to cereal mush. He folded the map into a soggy paper airplane and flung it ahead. Surprisingly, it caught the wind and flew perfectly through a tiny open window near the citadel's base. Max squinted. A plan was forming. With the stealth of a raccoon in a garbage can, Max crawled through the pancake fields, slid beneath the jelly bean hedges, and avoided the gaze of a suspicious omelet owl perched on a nearby trellis. When he reached the base of the citadel, he spotted a maintenance tunnel hidden behind a wall of croissants. He clawed through them with ruthless precision, stuffing 2 into his mouth for good measure. Inside, the tunnel was dark, damp, and smelled faintly of garlic bread. Max's whiskers twitched. He was getting closer. Deeper in the tunnel, a strange glow began to illuminate the walls. Symbols in the shape of tiny eggs danced and shifted, and Max could hear faint whispering in an unknown language, something between clucking and chanting. As he crept forward, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber filled with giant, glowing eggs. A rooster wearing a velvet cape stood in the center, holding the crown of Cluck. His eyes glowed orange, and his beak twitched with menace. "You're too late, Maximus," the rooster hissed. "The eggpocalypse begins now." Max didn't respond, he just ran, at full fluff, straight into the rooster's cape. The two rolled across the floor in a flurry of feathers, bacon strips, and dramatic music. The crown flew through the air, spinning slowly as if the entire dimension had entered slow motion. Max's eyes locked on it. Everything faded. No tunnel, no eggs, no villainous rooster, just the golden crown suspended in space. He pounced. Mid-air, he twisted, tail flipping like a helicopter rotor, and snatched the crown in his teeth. The instant he touched it, a shockwave burst from his body, vaporizing the eggs and reversing the eggpocalypse. Light filled the chamber. The evil rooster let out a final dramatic squawk before dissolving into a harmless omelet. Max landed on his feet. Well, almost. His belly hit the ground first. The crown rolled to a stop beside him. The chickens of the citadel began to cheer. He was a hero. Again, just as Max was about to bask in the applause and perhaps demand a sandwich tribute, the portal machine appeared again, blinking and beeping. Before Max could say cluck, it sucked him back into a whirlwind of colors and dropped him onto a cold metal floor. Gone was the syrup sky. Gone were the jelly hills and the poultry politics. Now, he was surrounded by blinking consoles, floating robots, and an odd smell of burnt popcorn. Max was on a spaceship. A robotic voice echoed overhead. "Welcome aboard the Galactic Tuna Voyager. Mission: stop the intergalactic sardine smugglers." Max meowed loudly, more annoyed than confused. Another mission. Couldn't he just sleep? Before he could protest, a mechanical paw reached down, scooped him up, and plopped him into a tiny spacesuit. A helmet descended over his head, complete with snack dispensers built into the visor. At least the tech was thoughtful. His mission, apparently, was to infiltrate the smuggler's ship, a massive space station disguised as a moon. Inside, cats from every galaxy were forced to catch sardines in zero gravity, their rewards reduced to crumbs. Max's job was to liberate the fish, expose the operation, and possibly commandeer the ship for a nap-friendly future. Max floated through the ship's corridors, bouncing from wall to wall. His spacesuit squeaked. He passed a window and saw Earth in the distance, a tiny blue marble. Part of him missed his house, his windowsill, and the warm spot by the radiator. But another part of him, mostly his stomach, was very interested in interstellar sardines. When he finally reached the smuggler's base, he was greeted by a team of robotic raccoons, all wearing sunglasses and chewing imaginary gum. One of them snapped his claws. Password. Max blinked. Then, with all the sass he could muster, he slowly extended a single claw and scratched the word meow onto the metal wall. The raccoons stared, then burst into applause. Legend 1 whispered. They let him in. The inside of the smuggler base was chaos. Sardines flew through the air. Cats in tiny rocket boots chased after them. Some giggling, others meowing in rage. Machines rattled. Alarms blared. A voice on the intercom kept yelling, "Do not eat the cargo." Max launched himself into the air and grabbed onto a rope made of twine spaghetti, swinging across the main chamber. He spotted the control panel, a glowing orb guarded by 2 cyber ferrets with laser tails. He dropped onto the panel, hissed, and whipped his tail like a sword. The ferrets backed off, clearly unprepared for a bacon-armored space cat with zero fear. Max pawed at the orb. Lights flickered, sirens screamed. The sardines began teleporting out of the station and back into the wild oceans of the universe. One sardine paused mid-flight, winked at Max, then vanished in a sparkle of stardust. The raccoons started chanting his name. Before he could pose dramatically, the smuggler base began to shake. Explosions rocked the structure. Max knew the drill. He darted to the escape pods, shoved a surprised parrot pirate out of the way, and launched into the stars. The pod hurtled through space. Stars streaked by. Inside, Max curled up, tail around. His face, finally ready for the nap he had been craving since his windowsill thud that morning. But then, just as his eyes were closing, the pod began to tremble. Another portal. The machine wasn't done with him yet. With a final spark, the pod burst through dimensional walls and landed crash-bang on a beach. Max rolled out, coughing up a space sardine, and looked around. The sky was purple, the sand glittered. The ocean purred like 1,000 kittens. Seagulls with monocles strutted along the shore, holding scrolls in their beaks. A turtle wearing a crown and a surfboard approached Max slowly. "Welcome, chosen cat," it said. "You've arrived in the kingdom of Meowie, and we have a surfing competition that only you can win." Max's eye twitched. He hated water. But he also never turned down a challenge. Max stared at the talking turtle for a full 10 seconds without blinking. The turtle stared back, slow and unbothered, as if this moment had been predicted in an ancient prophecy carved into seashells. Max's tail gave a lazy flick, brushing sand off his bacon armor, which was now partially melted and glittering from cosmic heat. A surfing competition. Against whom? Other cats? Dolphins? Sea dragons? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. If destiny called, Max answered. Unless it was past snack time, which it nearly was. The turtle gestured toward a line of surfboards, each with strange markings. One was shaped like a sardine. Another looked like a banana peel. The third, golden, shimmering, lined with fur, clearly belonged to a legend or a lunatic. Max waddled forward and chose the golden one. The turtle gave a wise nod, slow and approving. A cheering crowd of seagulls and hermit crabs erupted in clacks and caws. A trumpet sounded from a clam. The waves ahead weren't ordinary waves. They twisted in spirals, carried sparkles of cosmic dust, and glowed from underneath, like someone had poured milk into the ocean and lit it with stars. Max had never surfed a day in his life, but that didn't matter. He was a cat, and cats don't surf, they dominate. He dragged the board to the edge of the water, hopped on with minimal grace, and pushed off. The first wave hit like a freight train made of marshmallows. Max wobbled, claws digging into the furry surface of the board. The crowd gasped. He swerved left, caught the tail of a comet wave, and suddenly he was gliding, smooth, confident, like he'd done this in another life. He leaned, flipped, twisted through impossible loops, leaving trails of glowing fur behind. Dolphins leaped beside him in perfect rhythm. A jellyfish crowd sang his name in bubbly chorus. Then came the final wave, monstrous, spiraling upward like a blue cyclone reaching the moon. Max narrowed his eyes. He launched up its face, defying gravity, spinning faster than a pizza in a storm. At the peak, he leaped off the board. Mid-air struck a pose, belly out. Tail curled like a question mark, and landed back on the board with a splash that sent a tidal wave of glitter crashing behind him. The beach exploded in applause. The seagulls fainted. The turtle wept a single tear, but just as Max paddled back to shore, a rumble shook the earth. The sea parted. A massive catfish monster, 12 stories tall and wearing sunglasses, rose from the depths. Its voice echoed across the land. "Who dares win the crown of Meowie without challenging me?" Max didn't blink. He was so tired. He had surfed, saved chickens, dodged sardines in space. Now a sea monster. Fine. He unsheathed one claw, pointed it directly at the beast, and hissed the hiss of 1,000 tired cats woken from their nap. The catfish lunged. Max leaped onto its head, dug in, and steered it like a jet ski. The monster bucked, spun, dove, under the waves, but Max held on with the fury of every cat denied their tuna. He rode the beast through a flaming ring of coral, slapped it on the snout, and sent it flying into the sky like a rocket, where it exploded into fish flakes and confetti. Silence. Then, the largest crab on the beach approached, holding a velvet pillow with a pearl-encrusted fish collar. It placed it gently around Max's neck. The crowd roared. The turtle bowed. Max simply sat down, lifted his paw, and cleaned behind one ear like he hadn't just fought Poseidon's aquatic cousin. But before the adoration could sink in, the sky cracked open. The portal. Again. This time Max wasn't sucked. He jumped. Involuntarily, he had accepted his fate now. He was the dimensional wanderer, the chunky guardian of universes, the furball of fate. The portal dropped him into darkness. Pitch black. No smell, no sound. Just void. Then a spotlight clicked on. Max stood alone on a wooden stage. An audience of shadowy figures stared. A voice boomed from the ceiling. Welcome, Maximus. Final trial. The theater of the mind. Max tilted his head. Theater. He wasn't trained. He barely performed unless food was involved. A door opened behind him. A smaller, thinner version of himself walked out. This Max was sleek, clean, elegant, not fat, not scrappy. This was Max without flaws, the perfect version. He even had a bow tie. The announcer continued. To return home, you must defeat yourself. Not in battle, but in identity. Who are you, Maximus, the ideal, or the real? Max stared at his thinner self. Perfect. Max gave a smug little smirk and began walking in circles around him. You know, if you just stopped eating every donut, you might have more grace. Max ignored him. If you'd done yoga instead of sleeping on top of remotes, you'd have agility. Max narrowed his eyes. You're just a fat cat with a lucky paw, nothing more. That was it. Max pounced. The two collided, tumbling across the stage in a blur of orange and sarcasm. Claws met paws. Tails smacked face. The lights spun, music played, and the audience gasped. Max finally pinned Perfect Max down, leaned in, and with a slow, powerful meow, said, I may be fat, but I'm real. The spotlight exploded. The audience vanished. The fake Max melted into sparkles. The floor beneath him gave way, and Max fell into a warm, golden light. He blinked. Sunlight. The WINDOWSILL. His home. He was back. The house smelled like morning. The birds were chirping. A bowl of fresh food sat on the kitchen floor. Max looked around slowly, making sure it was real, then leaped down and waddled to the bowl. He took a bite. Tuna, not cosmic, not royal, just plain, delicious tuna. He ate in silence, licking every last bit, then curled up in the sun patch by the window. His bacon armor was gone, his helmet lost. The collar from Meowie had become a simple bell, but inside him, he carried every moment, the Jellyland, the chicken war, the star sardines, the sea monster, and the version of himself that thought perfection was better than personality. Max closed his eyes, but just before he drifted off, the floor, HUMMED. The machine, still active. Waiting. And in his dream, Max smiled, because no matter where he went, no matter how absurd, how bizarre, how wild the universe became, he knew exactly who he was. The big fat orange cat, the magnificent Maximus, and the adventures were far from over.